You're watching The Tom Renz Show with your host, Tom Renz.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. We are on the road doing what we do, running around the country trying to save America, save freedom, and, hopefully save ourselves from ourselves, to be real honest. Looking at this mess that we have that we're fighting and what's going on in this country and around the world, it's a tall order right now, so there's always work to be done, and well, it's hard to stay in the same spot for more than 5 minutes. I got a lot of work to do. Guys, I'm excited today. So we've got my new friend Cole Stevens coming on today. And you may not know Cole's name, but let me tell you who he is. Everybody's heard because Donald Trump talked about Delilah's Law in the State of the Union. Well, Delilah's Law is related to these illegals and their driver's licenses and the disaster that that's causing. And, we see these illegals who are driving these semis, these big, giant semis. And I mean, that's you talk about a dangerous thing. You can't read road signs and you don't know how to drive. You definitely don't want to be behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler, especially a loaded one, because if that hits a car, there's no surviving. I used to be a fireman. If you got a call on a semi versus a car, you just planned on it being a fatality or multiple. So, the idea that these illegals are driving these semis without proper training, without proper education, not being able to read road signs is appalling. Well, Cole's the guy that kind of figured out that this was happening and what's going on. And he is very, very involved in this. And his family owns an American trucking company. Good guy, and I'm actually really excited to talk to him because there's a whole lot happening with our truckers and with things happening related to our trucking. And I really want to make sure that we kind of get some of this out, because we have 3.5 million Americans that drive truck for a living. They feed their families, blue-collar jobs. These are really, really important jobs. They're kind of the heartbeat of America. And they're also, my brothers and sisters that are driving truck for a living are some of the best blue collar people out there. They are the people that they listen to Rush Limbaugh, they listen to Glenn Beck. They've been, they were the original talk radio guys. They supported. You look what the truckers did in Canada. This is, you want to find MAGA, find a trucker. That's MAGA. That's real MAGA. So, frankly, I got to tell you guys, I just had a conversation with a trucker yesterday, and it never ceases to amaze me how much these guys know. Some of the most educated and knowledgeable people out there, because they listen to the talk radio all day, listen to the news all day. They just kind of have a pulse on everything that's happening. So I can't say good enough things about the people that do that. The professionals that drive the trucks and do that stuff, and just an important thing. So I'm excited about that. We're seeing some interesting things in Iran. I think the single most important thing I saw was there's a group out of Iran that's now talking about and seems to be pushing to kind of consolidate and push back against the regime. Now, this is important because we can't win this war without the Iranian people fighting back. This is the first time there's been any word of any of them even talking about fighting back. So that's kind of a big deal. We'll see what's going to happen with that. But I mean, that's also very relevant because when we talk about our truck drivers, guess what? They got to pay for gas. And if there's a war in the Middle East, gas ain't cheap. There's no question about that. No matter how you spend it or what you say, when there is war in the Middle East, gas prices go up. That's just the way it is. It's the way it's always been. It's the way it'll always be. So anyways, lots to get into. Before we get going, remember, we need your help and support. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. We're going to stay with truth, guys. Not right, not left, just truth. We're not cultists. We're not suffering from derangement syndrome. We want the president to be successful. We think that there's good things there. But we don't have to like everything he does. We're going to tell the truth regardless. And the thing about it is that doesn't pay. Nobody pays you off for that position. Democrats don't pay me off. Republicans don't pay me off. Nobody likes the truth. So truth depends on you guys. Your support allows us to tell the truth. So GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. Please support us if you're willing. And today I want to highlight one of my new and favorite sponsors, Hale & Associates. Hale & Associates, they do financial planning, annuities, all sorts of things. Now, right now, the economy is a mess. We got war. We got all sorts of chaos happening. And I got to be honest with you, navigating the economy right now is difficult. I like investing in a lot of different things. I think that you want to have some money in gold and silver. I think you want to have some money in, there's a couple of the cryptos that, if you don't invest in them, you're just going to miss out. I like annuities. I think you want to have that. Hale & Associates are the best for that. And they're the best for helping you overall. These guys, they're fiduciaries, which means that they work for you, not for themselves, and they look out for your best interest. And they have some of the best products on the market. They have the best advice on the market. I love these guys. I'm very glad to have them as a sponsor. Make sure that if you really want to make sure your finances are set up, how much do you want to put in gold and silver? How much do you want to put in the stock market? How much do you want to put in annuity? Ask them. They'll help you. So make sure you contact Hale & Associates. Tell them Renz sent you. You can see the link on the bottom of the screen. Tell them Renz sent you. And get your finance squared. All right. Without further ado, I want to just jump right in with Cole and kind of see what we can learn from him about all the stuff that's happening. So let me introduce my friend Ben. If we could bring Cole on. And here we have it. Cole, honored to meet you and glad to have you on the show. How you doing today?
Thanks for having me, Tom. We're doing good. We've seen better days, like you mentioned, with the fuel spikes and the war going on in the Middle East. It really hits the pocketbooks quickly of truckers and trucking companies. But we're doing good. We're holding up okay, despite going through the ringer the past few years with a global pandemic and then a migration takeover within our space of illegal immigrants, driving semi trucks. So it's been a wild ride the past few years.
Well, it has been. And, I want to just, for all the truckers who are struggling to make a living, and now they're dealing with, super high gas prices again, that will probably continue to climb for a minute. Our prayers for all of them. I'm not 100% sure why we're blowing up Iran right now, but, I know that it has a real impact on Americans. And, people say, well, that's why we did Venezuela. It doesn't matter. The price of gas is way up. It's up like 50 cents a gallon in many places. And at the end of the day, the truckers have to pay for that. And that means you have to pay for it because all the goods that they're shipping. It's interesting. The Democrats screamed about Donald Trump's tariffs, saying, oh, it's going to affect the regular guy. But they don't seem to complain about the fact that you guys got to pay more for gas, which is going to affect the regular guy a hell of a lot more than the tariffs were. It's a mess. How are you guys dealing with all that?
It's just one punch after another sometimes, Tom. Sometimes you got to roll with the punches, but other times you got to hit back. Our federal associations and our federal agencies, I feel like, really sold out the American truck driver, right? With failed policy, rolling back the English language proficiency under Obama in June of 2016, and then obviously the outrageous issuance across the country of these non-domicile CDLs. And now that they're coming out with all these audits, they're starting to recognize just massively large percentages of these things that were issued illegally. I'll say I'm very distrusting of, whether or not our federal agencies really have the American truck drivers and the American trucking companies' best interests at heart. And I'll always call that out. I think some of the leadership under this administration is fantastic. Director Derek Bars has done great at the FMCSA, but a lot of the bureaucracy and a lot of the bureaucrats beneath him have been there for 15, 20 years. And, I think what a lot of American truck drivers and company owners want to know is, how did this happen? How did we allow this to happen? How did we allow people that can't read or understand in an emergency and speak English, read our road signs? How do we allow them to get behind, an 80,000-pound rig with cargo, also hauling God knows what, right, Tom? And we actually just had a congressional testimony and hearing last week that Commissioner Tim Tipton here out of the state of Oklahoma, that's over DPS, our Department of Public Safety, was testifying, about what an 80,000-pound rig that's hazmat can do. Being from Oklahoma, right, with the Murrah bombing, we know exactly what a truck filled with hazardous material can do. And I believe that, that we have a real national security crisis on our hands, both with public safety on our roadways, but also, genuinely being at war with Iran right now. It's makes you think twice about what we got going and moving in our supply chain and who we have hauling it, right? And that's why we've been fighting so hard is, myself and then the founder of American Truckers United, both Shannon Everett and Harvey Beach, really started this in the state of Arkansas. And then their state agencies and associations really stepped in, I think, with a lot of the mega fleets and the big conglomerates out there and large retail. And they stonewalled them in the state of Arkansas back in March of 2025. And that's really whenever I stepped in and said, we gotta do something about this, right? We're the crossroads of America. Here in Oklahoma, we've got to protect our truck drivers' livelihoods. And we've got to protect, both Oklahomans and all Americans on the roadways with some state policy. And then that's whenever we got the Safe and Secure Roads Act of 2025, which was SB 20, done here in the state. And that's really when you started seeing a lot of these Operation Guardian stings and these 287G programs take off.
So I'm going to interrupt you there because we got to go back a little bit. We're getting ahead of ourselves. And you guys, everything I let you keep going because you were really on the roll and it was really valuable. But let's go back, right? Because there's a few things we want to pull apart here. So the first one is, let's talk about the risks, right? So we know the idea of illegals having driver's license. I mean, the risks are just profound everywhere. But I would break it down into two categories right now that are particularly relevant. One is the risk of a guy that can't read or speak English driving an 80,000-pound truck. The other is particularly related right now with the war in Iran, and we just had Ted Cruz coming out and talking about the sleeper cells from Iran and the terrorist activity and some of the things there. That we have, 80,000-pound truck loaded, depending on what it's loaded with, can be a real weapon. So let's start out with the former. So I was a fireman as a young guy. And when I was a fireman, we would get, you get the call goes out and, firemen respond to all car wrecks. And, when you get the call and you heard, semi versus car, you just packed up ready for fatalities. I mean, you were just ready for it because a truck, a fully loaded truck can weigh 80,000 pounds. I mean, compare that to a regular car, 5 to 10,000 ish.
Yep.
You got a real kind of mismatch going on there. The 80,000 pound vehicle moving 60 to 75 miles an hour is not going to have a whole lot of issue it's not going to stop when it hits the 5,000 pound car, even if the 5,000 pound car has a bunch of kids in it. So it's a very, very dangerous thing. Once that wreck happens, if it happens because someone doesn't understand a sign, is improperly trained, didn't go through schooling, for any reason, then they can't speak English. So the first responders get there, and I can tell you I was a first responder on a number of different instances where we had people that couldn't speak English. Well, you know what? I don't speak Spanish, not well anyways. And what do you want me to do? I mean, I'm here to help, but I don't know what you're saying.
Yep.
And I don't know what's going on. And so you've got a whole bunch of issues there. Truck versus car, not a winning thing. Now you guys own a truck. Your family owns a trucking company. You're part of this. You've seen this. You know how dangerous these things are. I know you guys take safety very seriously in your company, but talk to me a little bit about that.
Absolutely, Tom. So, to your first point, right, with an 80,000 pound rig, what we're seeing across the U.S. is, even if they're not loaded with hazardous material, it's like a bomb going off with the kinetic energy of them slamming into the back of especially stop traffic, which is what we're seeing a lot of. So really what's happening is a forced labor practice. Some of the most nefarious people in the country are the ones that actually are running and owning a lot of these trucking companies, right? So everybody asks, well, why can't we go after the trucking companies? A lot of them are being dispatched from overseas. So a lot of these big, owners that are being funded by cartels or mobs or foreign oligarchs, they don't care, right? They're not here to be arrested and held accountable. So a lot of this labor is being run 16 to 20 hours a day of drive time. So that's why you're seeing these catastrophic rear-end collisions like what happened in Coleman's case.
A lot of the trucking companies are now foreign owned?
Oh, absolutely. They just like we have the problem here in Oklahoma with Chinese nationals buying up land in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah,
you're also having them spin up American LLCs through just a handful of attorneys that'll get them a hold of these American companies, and then they just apply for a US DOT and they get it. So really, you're seeing these massive companies come out of nowhere that are just holding companies. And they're blowing up to being, 10,000 trucks strong, some of them, and they're foreign owned. I mean, if that's not a national security crisis, Tom, I don't know what is with that ownership in our supply chain. But then that's
an absolute crisis. And I got to be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about it and was unaware of it. I mean, I didn't know that that we were allowing foreign dispatch. I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah.
That's dispatch, by the way. Well, I'll let you do this. Dispatch is basically letting people know where to go, what to do, telling the drivers what they're doing. And also remember, and I'll let Cole, you can comment on both of these, a little bit about dispatch. And then also truck drivers have very strict limits on the number of hours they're allowed to drive in a day. Because if you get too tired and you make a mistake in a truck, people die.
That's right.
So these foreign owners, what Cole's saying is that, these guys, they don't care. They're not here. You can't arrest them. And if the dispatch isn't even here, I mean, I can tell you suing a foreign entity is a absolute bear. And if they don't, depending on how that's structured, you could structure where there's almost no risk. Tell me a little bit about, fill everybody in a little bit on dispatch and, the safety requirements for, because it's a big deal with semis.
That's absolutely right, Tom. So, you're exactly spot on about that's how we get our drivers our information and really kind of the care, custody, and control of that vehicle and getting that driver safely to where they want to go. But whenever somebody, doesn't care about safety whatsoever, and all they care about is driving as much revenue as they possibly can to that tractor.
Yeah.
So really, I'll start from the beginning with how these people get here. We believe that it's very organized, and Commissioner Tipton testified that in congressional hearings last week, that it's very, very organized with how these people get here. And so whenever you think about the human trafficking element, Tom, of how they get these people here, then they can't speak English, right? So then they lock them in a 10 by 10, basically, cell, and they force them to drive because they're back home with their families. And so then they send all their money back, right? So they're driving as much revenue. A lot of these drivers really don't understand that they're being taken advantage of the way that they are. And we call it forced labor practices. I mean, it's basically a version. It is. It's slavery, indentured servitude. And so whenever they have the threat of, we've had whistleblowers come forward too, Tom, that literally if they don't drive the truck, their owners will threaten to call ICE on them to have them deported. I mean, it's some of the most twisted, evil, corrupt things that you can imagine. And again, we ask ourselves, how did we allow this to happen with our governing agency that has a $1.1 billion a year budget? I mean, that's all they're supposed to do is motor carrier safety. How did we get here over a 5-year period after American truck drivers carried this nation as heroes through a global pandemic? I mean, you reflect back on what 2020 and 2021 were. I mean, these were American heroes, delivering the goods, keeping the lights on, delivering fuel, everything that we needed to keep our nation going, and then to be sold out, I feel, by the bureaucrats in DC, and then obviously some really nefarious people within state governments that took advantage of these licensing practices. So a big misconception is that these are fraudulent licenses, but how they're getting away with this, and Commissioner Tipton did a great job in DC testifying to this too, is the license itself is valid. It's legal. It was the means that they got the licenses that were illegal. So a lot of our state law enforcement, those are the only ones that do commercial motor vehicle enforcement. They don't know any different, right? Because it's a valid license that ties into their state systems. These are not like your old, you're 19 and you want to try to go to the bar license and you get a fake, right? These are very real. These and a lot of them too. Another national security issue that continues to come to light is the majority of these are also real ID compliant, Tom.
Really?
Oh yeah. So you have illegal aliens driving 80,000-pound rigs with real ID compliant licenses. I mean, look at the one from Operation Guardian, I believe is a New York license, no name given, right? That was the big headline. Look in the top right corner. It's got the real ID star. The terrorist out of Pennsylvania on a non-domicile CDL, a known Uzbekistani terrorist, right, out of Pennsylvania, was also real ID compliant. So you look at this and you're just like,
real ID. I've spoken out about this because real ID is nothing but digital track and trace.
Yeah.
And I've got a link pinned to the top of the Twitter still talking about that. We've essentially created a digital ID. That's what real ID is. And this just confirms that not only is it useless for anything but tracking and tracing, there's just not even a purpose. So that's good to know.
It's already been blown up, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the scale. I think you're going to start seeing some of these federal legislators start to push back on some of this because of the CDL licensure problem. And it's unbelievable how we got here, Tom, at this large of a scale this quickly. It's very organized and very well funded. Well, let's
talk about the other aspect of the safety, right? So you've got people that are completely incapable of dealing with any sort of an emergency or driving that are you're driving essentially a 80,000-pound bomb. And then you have people coming here, and you mentioned the Uzbeki guy that was a known terrorist. We've got all the Iranian sleeper cells that were allowed in through the southern border under Joe Biden, and we've got this mess going on. Now we have people who may well want to use their fake or ill-gotten or fraudulently obtained CDLs to load up a semi with, say, fertilizer or some other explosive material, and then use it as a bomb, as a weapon of mass destruction, to be real honest with you, because a semi full of the right kind of fertilizer with the right kind of materials to blow it up I mean, we're talking about a massive explosion if released in a city or elsewhere. I mean, and this is now a real threat because we're giving these guys licenses, right? I mean, and as you said, they're not fake licenses; they're
Yeah.
real licenses, just fraudulently obtained. This is a real danger. I mean, yeah, and you've already mentioned a couple of terrorists that are doing it. Tell me more about this.
It's a national security crisis. I believe 9/11 was pulled off with about 30 domestic licenses. And the number that, is very public and known from Secretary Duffy was 194,000 of these non-domicile CDLs, Tom. So, I mean, the scale and the potential here, I believe in my heart is one of the largest national security crises to the homeland, probably since 9/11. It just has the potential there. And again, when the majority of them are real ID compliant, I mean, you can get on airplanes, you can get into federal buildings. So looking at this licensure problem that a lot of Democratic states caused, California, New York, Illinois are obviously the worst, but red states are also not off the hook. We've seen it in Florida. We've seen it in Texas. Giving out these licenses, they realize what they've done, and they're trying to peel it back. But states like California continue to actually fight against the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And so, we're doing everything that we can to help them with our expertise. But it is a very, very real. It's a very, very real threat. And, we're monitoring it very closely, but I definitely commend, people like Secretary Duffy and this administration for taking it seriously. I mean, the hand that these people were dealt, Tom, it's like an unplayable hand, right? I mean, it's unbelievable what the previous administration did and the scale, in our opinion, is to try to keep the cost of goods cheap. Right? They did everything that they could to import the third world here to keep everything moving. So as soon as you hear the term shortage, if it's your industry, get ready for the bottom to fall out. And my opinion is you hear, hey, we have, an airline pilot shortage. And I'm like, I would rather pay a little bit more to know that I'm going to get where I need to go, for a very high trained, high quality airline pilot. And the same should ring true for American truck drivers. And I think, between our agencies and a lot of our associations, quite frankly, that are supposed to have our back, they sold this driver shortage narrative for 20 plus years. And I think they got what they wanted with that fallout of actual labor. And
let's talk about that scheme, right? Let's break that down. So let me tell everybody, for anybody that doesn't know how this works. So big industry, what they do, and there's studies on this, they will put out hundreds of job postings for jobs that they may not even really have. And if someone interviews, they'll say, nope, you're no good, you're no good, you're no good. And they want these job postings out there, right? And what they do is they claim there's a shortage. We can't find qualified people willing to do the work. Now, there's two reasons this is done. One could be because they could find people that would do the work. They just don't want to pay them a realistic wage, right? Mm-hmm. So part of it is to keep downward pressure on wages. But then there's the other part where they could find people willing to work for the wage, but they won't hire them. And the reason they won't hire them is because they want the government to allow for more H-1 visas, or they want to become eligible for some government program. And so by keeping these unfulfilled jobs, they use that to try and pressure the government to give them access to foreign workers who they can then pay a far lower price to do the same work. And so this is a trick that big corporations are using. Now, the people that own businesses in America, people like Cole, who, his family's got the trucking business, they don't do that stuff. But the big corporate oligarchs, that's exactly what they do, to try and argue that they need more cheap foreign labor. But it's not because they need cheap foreign labor. It's because they don't want to pay Americans to do the job, because Americans won't do it for free or for cheap. So this is being used in trucking and elsewhere to essentially justify things that are unjustifiable otherwise. So if I got that right, does that sound about right to you, Cole?
Absolutely right, Tom. And, another economic thing that we see a lot in our space is that, trucking gets blamed a lot for the cost of goods, but we've done a lot of really, really deep analysis on the actual truckload services specifically, which is where we saw the major crash due to this labor dumping scheme. It's roughly about 3% of the total cost of goods sold for any unit, when you break it out with truckload services, because you're hauling such a large volume. So, we were demonized, and I feel like it was heavily politicized during COVID that, these freight rates are that's what's driving up inflation, right?
Well, wait a second. Because at the same time, it's not the pay the truck drivers taking home.
That's right.
How much? It's the cost of gas, the cost of insurance, the cost of the truck, the cost of maintenance on the truck, the cost of the parts that you can't get because they're all made in China and you couldn't get anything imported.
That's right.
We don't have American manufacturing. The cost of freight is exceedingly high at this point, but it's not because truck drivers are getting rich. It's because all the scumbags around the industry are getting rich, and we're paying for $4 gas.
That's right.
That's the problem.
Yep. You have these middlemen, these freight brokers, right? Just like you're seeing a lot in the insurance agency. They're the ones that are the profiteers in this entire scheme, because then they can just go use all this foreign labor. I mean, a truck driver that can't speak English is not going to go get a direct contract with a Fortune 500 company, right, Tom?
Well,
and they utilize this shield. And that's actually part of why we were up advocating in DC, because we had a Supreme Court hearing just last week with oral arguments, because they're trying to give these freight brokers immunity. Not the Supreme Court's not trying to give it to them, but these brokers want full immunity from state tort. So basically a crash like Delilah Coleman's, they could potentially get nothing out of.
There's a case before the court on this, on immunity on it?
Yep, it's Montgomery v. Caribe. So if you look that up, oral arguments were last week. And so we should have a ruling in June. And I hope that they hold these brokers accountable.
How was it received?
I believe it was received very well by the justices. The questions that they were asking and the posturing. But again, I'm not a Supreme Court attorney. So our attorneys felt like it went very good, which is good news, because again, Delilah Coleman had a traumatic brain injury. She's got, lifelong medical bills and therapy, and so many of these other victims' families that have lost loved ones. And so when it's a nefarious carrier, right, and they skirt out of the country, Tom, are you going to be able to collect insurance? Because most of the time, that's what Josh Burkeen in that congressional hearing was getting at last week as well, with Tim Tipton testifying, which is they're also committing insurance fraud on the carrier spot. So these families are getting nothing, Tom. So they're in stop traffic, they get crushed, they're lucky to survive, or they're killed, and then their families get nothing on the back end. And so,
let's talk about that.
Yeah,
tell us. So Donald Trump spoke about Delilah's Law during his national State of the Union. This is a very big deal, and I believe Delilah was there. I believe that, if I recall, she was the little girl was there for the thing.
Yeah.
The family, and you're involved with pushing for this law. Tell us the story. Tell us about what Delilah's Law is, why it's there, what happened. Give us the rundown.
So Delilah Coleman was in a catastrophic wreck a couple of years ago when she was 5 years old, and was very lucky to survive. She had a very traumatic brain injury, and now has
car.
Yep, semi versus car. The video's public. Never touched the brakes. Just completely smashed into multiple civilian vehicles in stop traffic, and now she has a lifelong recovery. She's not able to speak. She has cerebral palsy now. And so, she's a perfectly healthy 5-year-old girl that had her life upended, and also her parents' life upended between, Marcus and Ileana Coleman, having to take care of their baby girl when, just minding their own business on the roadways. And then an illegal alien never touches the brakes and just completely, destroys life as they know it. Right. And so
what state was that?
So it was in California. Which
so
is where
one of the California illegals?
Yes, it was. This gentleman actually was 20 years old. So we can't even hire people under the age of 21 for safe American carriers. This illegal alien was actually 20 years old at the time of the accident and spoke minimal English, and I believe had been driving way over his hours of service, if I recall. This is the typical standard, right, Tom?
Yeah.
And so what Marcus, is fighting for Delilah is, to hold these freight brokers accountable and to really revamp safety within the entire space. And so Delilah's law actually calls for the revocation of these non-domicile CDLs, that roughly 194,000 that, that Secretary Duffy and them have exposed through their audits across these states, because you can see it in their findings that the vast majority of these were issued illegally to illegal aliens. And I would say even the ones that, quote unquote, were issued legally, if you want to play technicalities, were still issued to illegal aliens that were just simple asylum seekers that crossed the border illegally. They got an employment authorization document, an EAD, and then within days, some of these people had their CDLs, where safe American drivers go for 3, 4, 5 weeks to CDL school. You have these CDL mills pumping out these licenses. And so we didn't stop the border crisis by leaving it open and then trying to get the people out, right, Tom? So why are we doing that in our industry? We're still issuing DOTs and passing them out like candy, right? And we're still allowing the renewal of a lot of these non-domicile CDLs. So we've got to shut off the floodgate. And that's the main thing that Delilah's law does up front, is get these illegal licenses off of our roadways to protect both our national security of our supply chain as well as Americans on the roadways with public safety. And then second, it would require for federal funding, because I don't know if you realize this or not, there's no federal commercial motor vehicle enforcement in terms of an actual law enforcement branch. We don't have that, right? Mm. It's done through federal grants that push down through the states. So that's your disconnect and the loophole that they take advantage of. Well, this 287G program, thank God for this 287G program to allow our state troopers that get this federal funding to then start being able to work on the immigration side, because we were not able to get anything done last year because they didn't have access to the immigration side of these drivers, Tom. And so Delilah's law requires that if you're going to get any type of transportation funding, that could be, MCSAP for the actual enforcement, that could also be your highway funding, anything to do with transportation. If you want federal funding, you have to take part in that 287G program to allow these state troopers to enforce immigration, to get these truck drivers off of our roadways. So it's robust. The current bill with how it is has teeth. And we're gonna make sure it doesn't become some toothless bill, and we're gonna make sure that it actually gets accomplished what POTUS called to get accomplished for people like Marcus and little girls like Delilah. Right, we got to keep fighting this fight. We have no choice. We were hung out to dry as an industry, but also we can't hang out the American motoring public because they're not covered with a lot of these bad actors.
Well, this is a huge issue, and I think it's interesting to hear what you're saying here on this. I think that it's interesting. There's a bunch of things on this issue that I just haven't been aware of. So, I'm learning a lot today, which is fun. A lot of times I'm focused on things I already know a lot about. I want to switch up gears a little bit because, listen, we need to pass that law, but I can't even get our Senate to pass the SAVE Act with 87% support. Yeah. These guys are just absolute useless crooks. So I want to hit you up on a couple other things real quick. And the number one thing I want to hit you up on. So I think in the last year or so, we started work on the third major factory here in the United States that is building self-driving semis. So we have AI self-driving semis. We have 3.5 million Americans who take care of their families driving truck. They do a good job. And, we got these issues with these illegals for sure. But, this is a huge segment of our economy. That is, semi-driver is huge.
Yep.
Now, you're an American trucker. Well, you got a company. You guys run the trucks, right?
Yep.
Obviously, if you didn't have to pay drivers, it makes you money. But it also is it's a little bit rough. Where do you fall on this whole AI truck driving thing?
It's a really slippery slope. It's just like any other industry. If you completely replace your labor force with automation, I don't see it going very well, Tom, especially with proper enforcement, because we've worked in this space before with some of these AV makers, and just on the back end, learning the policy that they're going after, right? I always dig into policy and insurance and how, like my dad always says, there's a cause and effect for everything. And so we try to learn as much about what's coming forward. That's why I'm the chief strategy officers. I try to keep my head up and my eyes open, looking downfield. They don't even know who would be liable in crashes with a lot of these autonomous vehicles, right? And so we've looked into like the level 4, which is the safety technology that's not driver out. So there's some stuff on our family in terms of like looking at level 4 with like lane departure, front end collision mitigation, because all that stuff is part of automated sensor, right? LiDAR, all these things that can help. They can help your driver force. So I'm all for that. And we've seen some partners come forward. Unfortunately, some of them haven't been as successful as the mega conglomerates with massive funding from your Fortune 100 companies. But I'll say this, I would call on the government that if they're ever going to allow the automation to occur, because you're seeing it everywhere. I mean, we're seeing end-to-end automation in warehouse space.
Yep.
I would want them to look at where the waste is. If they're going to hold our drivers to hours of service law, which again, they haven't held any of these illegal aliens to hours of service law. So that's one of the most frustrating parts is it's almost like it was an intentional replacement of American truck drivers, right? And that's what pisses me off, Tom.
Yeah.
Watching them destroy our industry and then almost get ready to bring an automation right over the top here on the back end. And I feel like we caught them a little bit before it was too late. What I would call on them to look at if they're the government and looking at regulatory policy is the waste on detention, right? So if you had drayage where a lot of these drivers get hung up at a shipper or receiver and it's out of their control, that it took them 6 hours to load someone and then they're losing their earnings potential because of that, automate that, right? If you're going to have a truck that's automating something, make it a drayage package within a short distance to where your driver's earnings are not eaten into, right? Because that's what we've seen across the industry with this labor dumping practice. So that's exactly what they want out of automation too. Right, Tom? Which is, well, we can replace you. I mean, it's that simple. But the craziest thing to me on the back end, nobody knows who would be on the hook. If something goes wrong with automation, Tom, right? Who is it? Is it the AV company that made it? Is it the person with the USDOT? That's the carrier on it? Is it the freight broker? Maybe that's the middleman that brokered the load. Nobody can answer that question whatsoever with who done it, right? And so I've got a lot of those questions myself before I really look into full autonomy. I think uncontrolled would be terrible. I'll just say that.
Well, it'd be terrible for the American people. Like I said, what do you do with those 3.5 million people that don't have a job? I got to be honest with you, I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
I don't like replacing human jobs. I don't like that we're doing that on the scale we are. I don't mind AI as a supplement, like you said. You want collision detection. You want, whatever sort of checks that an AI can do. That's fine. But I want it to be optional. And I don't want it to be something that's ever used to actually replace humanity. So I find this whole thing to be more than a little troubling, and I'm very concerned about it. So, I'm not okay with where they're going on it. And I think, what's going to happen is they're going to get the AI down and self-driving down to a point. I mean, we have the self-driving taxis, and look what that's doing to Uber drivers and the taxi drivers and the cities where that's coming out. It's just crushing it.
Tom, they did the same thing. Think about it. When's the last time you got into an Uber and a lot of your Uber drivers spoke English?
Yeah, that's true.
The exact same test run that we've seen in trucking, we've seen in the rideshare space. We've also seen in the final mile delivery space with your large retailers. I firmly believe, not to just totally throw my tinfoil hat on, but I believe that was the practice run for replacement. I mean, they shortage. We're short people because we don't want to pay them, and then they roll out automation right behind it, just like the Ubers. I mean, and some of the same players, Tom, some of the same players in the space.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that's tinfoil hat at all. I think it's very predictable and makes sense. I mean, you also, when you have a bunch of illegals driving, it's less Americans to grumble when they lose their jobs. So
and then they have to get on the system, right? It's by design that then you break their labor, and then they have to get on the government supplement system. That's what the other party wants, Tom. They just want more people on government welfare programs so that they can control people.
100%. Well, Cole, I appreciate what you got. Any other big news from your space? Things that are impacting our truckers and probably going to impact our country that you think we ought to hit before I let you go?
Yeah, I mean, this illegal immigration is the biggest, and then we have automation, and then you have the war with Iran with fuel prices. I mean, if that's not enough to try to manage and dodge and weave around the icebergs, I don't know what else is, right? So we've been going through the ringer, but like you said to start the show, Tom, like American truckers are some of the most resourceful and like smartest people in the country, informed. There's a lot of really good people that know how to navigate this. They're tough, and we're going to continue to do so. I would just say, if there's any of the American truckers out there listening, that you have hope. You have people like Shannon Everett and American Truckers United and myself and Harvey Beach, like fighting this fight across the country. And we're not going to back down. We're not going to give in, and we're not going to sell people out like our associations and agencies did. We're going to fight for our people. No matter what's going on, war with Iran, fuel prices, it's a dogfight, Tom, but I hope this was enlightening.
It is. Let Shannon know that if they're interested, I'd be interested in chat with them. Anything that I can do for my part, I just want to put it out there. I think that protecting our truckers is a really critical thing, and they're at a dangerous spot right now. The push for automation, the financial instability that comes with high gas price, everything else. It's a dangerous spot, and so I want to put out there that if I can help you guys, if I can support you guys, I'm happy to work with you guys. However, we can figure that out because you guys, it's the backbone of America.
That's
I mean, it's like our farmers and our ranchers. I'm doing a lot of work with them. There's just certain staples that make America America. Your farmers, ranchers, your truck drivers. They are the people that make this country great, and we need to support them. So if I can do that. Right. I'm here to do it, and please feel free to make the introductions. And if we can help you, Cole, please don't hesitate to reach back out. But thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tom. Appreciate it more than I can tell you.
Appreciate you. All right, we're going to finish up with one little thing here, and it's not little by any means. I want to hit one last big point. So we talked about fuel prices and the war in Iran and some of that stuff. And that is a really, really phenomenally important thing. And I want to bring up something that's interesting. So a lot of people have asked me about my position on the war, and I think it's ridiculous. I don't know why we're there. I don't know what the point is, but we're there. So obviously I support our troops, and obviously I want to win. I would like to find a way to get out of this because, to be real blunt with y'all, I don't think that we can have a meaningful victory in Iran without some things happening. And what I mean by meaningful is this. Iran can't stand against American military might. And basically no one in the world can. We can bomb you into the Stone Age, and that's great. But we did that with the Taliban in Afghanistan. We did that with Iraq. And we kept dropping bombs, and we kept doing things for years and years. And we even had troops on the ground in Afghanistan. It didn't matter. We didn't win that war. We ended up turning tail and running under Biden because Biden was a coward. And we had all sorts of things. But we didn't win the war. We didn't lose, but we didn't win. right? And so we haven't been winning wars because we keep fighting these wars that we can't win. If the goal of Iran is regime change and to truly turn Iran into an American ally with a new government, there is no way to do that short of, sending in hundreds of thousands of American troops. Iran is a huge country. It's bigger than Texas. It's just huge. And we can't control that much space without a lot of troops. It's mountainous. It's rugged. Just like in Afghanistan, these guys can hide in caves and tunnel systems, hidden bases, and they've been building them because they were worried about us attacking. So, the idea that we're going to run the table in Iran is it's just not real likely. So, with that in mind, how would you win this? Well, you either have to be willing to have a lot of American troops die, a lot more than we had in Afghanistan, or you're going to have an uprising within Iran. Now, if there's an uprising in Iran and the Iranian people want to fight back and they actually want to shoot people and be willing to die for their freedom, kind of like we did in the American Revolution. Well, France backed us in the American Revolution. I mean, and, we won our freedom and we won. If the people rise up, if the people demand freedom, a revolution can work. But a revolution can never be fought from the outside. And regime change is really about revolution. So, to my mind, I don't see how we get a victory out of this short of having the Iranian people really stand up, because we're not in this. American people are not going to support a long war with a lot of dead soldiers. They're just not. This is destroying the economy. It's destroying oil prices. It's destroying all sorts of things. The American people just won't tolerate it. Trump ran on ending foreign wars and, not starting them. So I just don't see this being something that people will support long term. The only way that we actually achieve victory is if the Iranian people say, we've had enough, we want regime change, and we're going to fight for it. So today I saw a headline or a tweet that I thought was really important. And this is from Jim Ferguson. And he's out of the UK. He does a great job of digging things out. And nobody can tell me he's not. I mean, a lot of times I'll hear people tell me, well, you got to look at the source. Ferguson is definitely, in line with MAGA. But he put this out. He says that a political declaration just emerged from Arab tribes in Iran's Khuzestan province, the area's most important oil-producing region. In the statement, they make several striking points. They reject the Islamic Republic and call for the complete removal of the regime. They demand secular democratic government based on human rights. They stress that Khuzestan is an inseparable part of Iran. They call for unity among all Iranian ethnic groups, including Kurds, Azeris, and Baloch. They express support for Reza Pahlavi as a unifying national figure for future transition. I don't know who Reza Pahlavi is, but Jim goes on to say Khuzestan isn't just another province, it's the heart of Iran's oil industry, so this is a big deal. Right. And there's a copy of the letter. And I think this is a very big deal. Right. Because in the event that the Iranian people really do start, taking this in their own hands and fighting, this could change things. Now, basically, if these guys fight and do their thing, we've got a shot with this. But they've got to be committed. Now, you got to remember the CCP is going to arm the opposition. The CCP is going to smuggle guns, smuggle intel to the Iranian guard, and they're going to be supporting that. And then we're going to be supporting the other side, and we're going to do the same thing. And so it'll be a proxy war, and there's no guarantees on who wins it. But there is a fighting chance, and it reduces the need for an American presence if the Iranians are fighting their own war. So this is a really big deal. I don't know if we don't know. I don't trust anything coming out of Iran. I don't trust American news. I don't trust foreign news. I don't trust, everybody's got an interest in this. But I think this creates a very interesting situation with a real opportunity for Trump to have a chance to make this something that we can tolerate, right? I mean, we already, first of all, the whole boots on the ground thing, let's be realistic. We have special forces on the ground now. Okay, we can pretend we don't. And no one's saying it because they don't want to have the American people have a stroke. But of course, there's special forces there. There's always special forces. But we don't want any massive American presence there, right? So if we had a few boots, a few special forces here and there, training people, show them what to do back, and the people rose up, and we provided air support, then there's at least a shot at turning this around. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens, but I don't see this as winnable otherwise. This seems like the best chance I've seen so far for us to have a chance to turn that around and make it winnable. So, all right, we're gonna call her a day. Please support us. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. Remember, we're telling the truth no matter what. We're going to stay focused on it and give you the best info that I have. So, support us so we can keep doing it. Also, go to TomRenz.com, check out our link to Hale & Associates, or just go to Hale & Associates and tell them Renz sent you. But support these guys. Wonderful company, good people. I just can't say enough good about them. Get your finances in line. Get your future protected. Work with Hale & Associates. They're fiduciaries. They're good people. You definitely want to support them. Thank you guys for watching. We will be back tomorrow.
Thank you for watching the Tom Renz Show. Join us live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, putting an axe in the skull of tyranny.
Hale & Associates are a financial services organization specializing in retirement planning. We work with individuals from across the country, understanding that each person has unique needs and desires. Our goal is to help you develop income planning solutions that last a lifetime while securing your estate in a tax-efficient manner. Since 1983, Hale & Associates has been committed to educating the public on effective retirement planning strategies. We strive to empower our clients to make informed decisions to achieve their financial goals and secure their future. Let us help you take the necessary steps to build a retirement plan that meets your needs and provides financial peace of mind.
Any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
It's time to stand up, speak out, get involved, and let's be intentional. Hello and welcome back to Intentional. I'm glad that you all are with us today. We have a great topic for you. It's something that you hear across the nation. It's a topic that touches millions of families across the United States, but often stays in the shadows of public discussion. The child welfare system. Child Protective Services, or CPS. CPS was created to protect children from abuse and neglect, and that mission is incredibly important. But over the years, concerns have really grown about how that system operates. There's questions about due process, emergency removals, and the long-term effects that it is having on American families. Today, we're going to revisit that conversation with someone that many of you already know. He is a returning guest and friend of the show, Sheriff Richard Mack. Now, he served about 20 years in law enforcement and was elected sheriff of Graham County, Arizona. After leaving office, he founded the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association, which is an organization that is focused on training law enforcement and the public officials about their constitutional rights and civil liberties. So, Sheriff Mack, welcome back to the show. Hello. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mick. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's really good to see you. Thanks for coming back on and taking a little time. It's always a pleasure.
I shouldn't ask that question. How are you doing? Because, darling, you look marvelous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, darling. Yourself. Back at you. Oh, I'm really glad that you came on to spend a little bit of time with me, sir. It feels like every time that we talk, there's some new conversation that's going on about the national government authority and individual rights and all of the things that have kind of eroded and been taken away from us. I can't help but notice, sir, that kind of over the last several years, there's been a lot of focus on constitutional issues. We had COVID, that was the public health policies. We see a lot about law enforcement responsibilities, child welfare cases, and it seems to me, Sheriff Mack, that people are asking about accountability and transparencies in ways that they've never have before. And I believe that that is the conversation that we need to have today. Accountability and reform, especially about CPS, Child Protective Services. I think it's something that we desperately need.
It's absolutely true. And we need it in several different places within our state governments. But I would say CPS is probably the most important one because it's the most abusive, no question. And these bureaucracies become powers and entities unto themselves, and they just do whatever the hell they want. And it's really astonishing and petrifying how much power these people wield and answer and are accountable to no one.
Ooh, that is so true. I mean, CPS really was to exist to investigate child abuse, neglect, protect those vulnerable children. And I don't know of anybody who doesn't think that that's a critical necessity. But, I know there are people out there, and I don't want to be, bombastic, because I know there are people out there. I know there's social workers. I know there are people who, investigators, they generally want to care and deeply have, a care about to ensure that the children are taken care of and harm is prevented being done to them. But you said it yourself. It's a bureaucracy. It's a bloated government system. And the problems are really developing because it doesn't seem to be enough oversight. The guardrails seem to be eroded in every state. The due process is lacking. We've put laws and policies in place, and it seems like those are actually doing some unintentional negative outcomes, although they were supposed to do, not do harm. And once your child is in that system, there seems to be a vast amount of money and time that is required just to get your child back. And so by that time, the family is totally decimated. And this is a major concern in America.
Yeah, it is. It seems that the CPS has taken on the same characteristics in every state, that they are inhuman, that they're inhumane, that they lack compassion and normal feelings towards their fellow man, that they have no intentions of helping or working with the families to stay together and to have a normal family relationship. Any complaint can result in you losing your children. And not only that, but this organization does not, do they have to? I was going to say they don't have to, but they don't follow the law in taking children because they just take them. If they feel like taking them, they take your children, period. And they don't need a warrant, and they don't need to ask permission of a court or a judge or the local sheriff. They'll just go in a home. The only thing they will do is they will call the local police or sheriff's office, depending on whose jurisdiction that family resides in. And then, if you ask the officers why you're here, and there'll be at least one, usually two, because these situations can be very emotional, very traumatic, and very volatile. And if you ask the officers, why are you here? They'll tell you to keep the peace. Mm-hmm. That is not true. Mm-hmm. They're there to do and enforce whatever CPS wants. And that's a huge difference from keeping the peace. Because if a child is being taken erroneously or unjustifiably, then wouldn't the officer be within his proper role as a peacekeeper and conservator of the peace to not allow it, to disallow such a move? And the officer would ask, where's your warrant? If there was ever a need for a warrant, this is it, because people have the right to keep their children, but no, they'll just take them and they'll go back and forth, and they'll say, oh, I guess we don't have to take them. Well, this is the thing. Most of their websites and most of their rules for taking a child are supposed to be very strict, and they're supposed to follow those rules. They don't. Because most of the states in this union have a statement on their websites that we don't want to take the children. That's the last resort. And if the child needs to be in a safe location, then we try to put them first with relatives, especially grandparents. And that's not true. Most of them don't do that. Most of them don't care. And if they violate that, there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow. I mean, this is really scary. Every parent needs to be aware, right? This is taking control of your child. Before we dive into a lot of the issues surrounding CPS, I want people to know you've spent years in law enforcement, and your family became very acquainted with the CPS system. You saw firsthand the concerns and the issues that are being raised out there. And I would really appreciate it, Sheriff Mack, if you just tell everybody a little bit about your background and what was your experience in dealing with CPS? I want everybody, all Americans, what do they need to know?
Well, I was a cop in Utah, and then I was sheriff in Arizona. And obviously, you're going to be dealing with these people on a regular basis. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen when I was a first rookie cop. I was a cop, in the 80s. I first hired on as a full-time patrol officer in 1979, and this is in Provo, Utah. The Division of Family Services, which what it was called there, DFS, they weren't as bad as they are today. And they would try to make sure that they followed the rules. And so it was very rare that we had to stand up to them and say, what are you people doing? Why are you taking this child? Why don't you just remove the accused party, take him out of the home, take her out of the home, and leave the child there? The child didn't do anything wrong. And so they would work with us on that usually. And then when I moved to Arizona in 1992, 1988, 1992 is when I was reelected. In 1988, I moved home to Arizona, and it was still the same. These organizations worked with us, and they didn't try to throw their weight around, and they knew that they didn't have the authority just to go in a home and grab a child and take off with them. And, I call that kidnapping. If you take a child away from parents without their permission, what is that called? Normally, that's kidnapping. Okay?
Yes, it is.
And so, but they understood that taking a child out of the home is very traumatic for the whole entire family, but mostly for the child. And usually that child is very comfortable going off with an aunt or grandma and grandpa. And they can keep them until most of this is resolved, which usually only takes a few days. And so if there's an abusive situation, I don't want the child to remain with an abusive parent or uncle or whatever. We want children to be safe. But I'm going to tell you honestly, it doesn't seem like that's really what CPS is after. They're after to exercise their control and to act like mini Hitlers all across the country and do whatever they want. And they use extortion. If you don't do what we say, if you don't sign these papers, if you don't sign a confession, then we're going to keep the child. And the thing of it is, the parents and family of that child have no idea where that child is. No idea. And they're supposed to make sure that the parents are allowed a visit with the child every day. And they don't. And that's not uncommon to make sure that they don't follow the rules, they don't follow the law at all.
Yeah.
They certainly don't follow the Fourth Amendment or the Fifth Amendment or the Ninth Amendment or it goes on and on. But first of all, I was teaching school about when this happened, and this happened about 7 years ago. And my daughter lived 45 minutes from us, and she had just remarried, and she had gone through a horrible divorce, but they reconciled, and they still 50-50 parent the children the three kids that they had, three daughters. And then the new husband and my daughter had a little baby, and he was a little over 2 at the time. And the thing of it is, the problem didn't even involve this my grandson. And my son-in-law got up every morning to take his stepdaughters to school. He was really good about it and very nice and got along with them very, very well. But one morning, the middle daughter was just being in a bad mood. She didn't want to go to school, and she wouldn't get in the van. And finally, he just grabbed her by the coat and put her in the vehicle. He never hit her, never smacked her, never kicked, nothing. Didn't even push her. He just grabbed her by the coat and put her in the car. Well, she got a little abrasion from the coat on the back of her shoulder. It wasn't bleeding. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a scrape. Well, my granddaughter showed, somebody saw the scrape at school, and they told the school, and the school reported it. And And the granddaughter was kind of embellishing it a little bit and, exaggerating a little bit. And so CPS was called. And they came over to the house, and my daughter called me crying. She goes, "CPS is here, and they're threatening to take our son away, your grandson." And I said, "Mom and I will be right there." So we really hustled over there, and I probably was speeding a little bit. And we got there, and we told CPS. I told CPS, I said, "I'm a former sheriff. I'm a former detective, and I specialized in crimes against children. And I used to help train CPS agents and teachers how to recognize abuse. And I'm here to tell you that my wife and I will be happy. We saw on your website that you have rules that you don't want to take the kid. You want it to go to, you want the family to be the first to take the child." Well, I said, my wife and I will take the child, and we won't allow anything to happen to it. But then I said, what does this have to do with my grandson? He wasn't part of this problem. He doesn't even go to school yet.
Right.
Well, the father has to guarantee to us that this child will be safe. And I turned to the police officer. I said, "Do you have children?" "Yes." "Can you guarantee to these ladies that your children are safe in your home?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I guess I can." I said, "How can you guarantee that?" They would have to go into your home and interview all your other kids and interview this child and that and interview your wife, and still, maybe they're lying. How can you guarantee that your child will be safe? Is it any different for this child? He doesn't have any history at all of being abused. And so I guess they didn't like that. So they went and had their meetings and whatnot, and they asked my wife and me a few questions. And they asked us if I've ever seen any abuse on any of the children from my son-in-law or my daughter. I said, "No, never. Not any kind. I don't even think they spank them. And if they do, it's very rare." And so they went back and talked about it and stuff. And they brought back and said, "Your wife and you do not qualify to take the child." Mick, I'm telling you,
What?
That is what they said.
Why?
A former detective who spent his career protecting children. Yeah. And so I said, "What on earth are you talking about?" They said, "Well, you disagreed with some of our assessments." I said, "So that's the rule for taking a child? That if we disagree with your assessments, which can be wrong sometimes, then they don't get to keep their children? Why don't you go to door into every home around here and ask them if they can guarantee the safety of their children?"
Well,
Then
yeah.
you want to put a cop at every one of those homes. And so this is how stupid it was. And so then they said, they asked us, "Well, what about if there was another place the kid could go?" They said, "Well, why can't he go with his sisters to their biological father?" Because that's where they were going. And then my grandson, the 2-year-old, he could go with his sisters and go to their other home. And everybody agreed that would be okay. Then for some reason, they changed their mind, and my oldest granddaughter was holding my grandson, and they just went and grabbed him, almost threw McKenna to the floor, my oldest granddaughter, and grabbed the baby and just took off with him. And my daughter was just hysterically crying, just sobbing. The sisters were crying, and I'm not kidding you. I came really close to just standing in the front of their car and not letting them out. But
I can imagine. Wow.
I knew the officers. I knew the only thing that was going to happen is that they would take me to jail or they would remove me, probably handcuffed. And so it was really a close call for me that night. And so then they said, "You can't get your son back." Talking to my son-in-law, "You can't get your son back until we interview you." He says, "I'm not talking to you people one iota. I'm not saying a damn thing to you. Stay out of my face." and I'm just going to be contacting a lawyer, and we're going to be suing you, and I'll get my son back, I guarantee you. And it turned out that my son-in-law was correct. Where they say don't talk to these agencies, it's absolutely true, because they had nothing to go on in any admission or confession whatsoever from him, and they really rely on that big time. So we got him back, and we were lucky. We got him back in 4.5 days. And
Wow.
the family wrote us a little letter that had him and said he is such a good boy, but the first night he wouldn't go to sleep. He just cried the whole night. And this is the type of trauma that these people are totally willing to torture these kids with. And look at, maybe this had been a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old who gets removed from his children or from his parents and is placed in a home where they have no idea who these people are not familiar with the surroundings, and they just sit there and cry all night long.
Yeah.
And these people don't care. CPS agents are trained not to care and not to be human.
Well, I think that's what gets me is it seems like there's almost a punishment in the process, because I've talked to parents, I've talked to caregivers, and they share with me about the system being stacked against them. It's like this maze that they're describing where they have to navigate through all these legal processes or DHS processes, and they don't know the rules. They don't know what they can and cannot do, or what needs to be done, or what needs to be said. And intentionally, they seem to create this confusion and fear. They further frustrate the process. And then just the fact of that being the punishment itself, like you said, they're stressed. There are all kinds of trauma for these families. And it just decimates them for years. I don't understand.
It is that. And Mac, because he was just barely over 2, I think he was like 25 months at the time, 26 months maybe. He got over it. And we think he did. Sometimes we still look and say, maybe he didn't get over that entirely. Because a child like that doesn't remember why he acts out the way he does, but he still acts out sometimes. It makes us wonder if that insecurity was brought on by our neighborhood CPS agents, and this type of cruelty, this just utter cruelty, means nothing to these people. And we're just protecting the children. Well, where did you come up with this criteria of families having to prove that a child is safe? Because nobody can do that. There's not anybody on the face of the planet that can prove to you that a child is going to be safe in their home. And quite frankly, it's none of your business if they can prove that or not. We don't have to prove anything to government. You have to prove that we've done something wrong. And if you can't do that, you don't get to just take children until somebody proves to you what you feel like it justifies your cruelty.
Yes.
And so my solution for all of this is that people in this country have got to go to their state legislatures and either abolish these CPS organizations or get them reined in and make sure that there's accountability and make some very strict laws and protocols about when they can take a child out of there. Then the sheriffs of this country have got to make sure that these people are towing the line. And if they don't, they need to start doing some arrests of themselves, removing CPS agents from their jobs and from their freedom, because there's got to be accountability. And I actually spoke to 2 or 3 sheriffs here in Arizona after we lost my grandson. And they said, we get this all the time from this. And one sheriff actually said, we don't even call, and we tell the other chiefs of police and the others, don't even call CPS, because they're going to totally screw it up, and they're going to traumatize children, and they're going to destroy families, and they're going to put fathers in a position of having to take the law into their own hands to keep their own children.
Yeah.
Say this is something that we need to provide some common sense to.
Yeah.
And so but when he told me that they don't even call, CPS is so out of control, we don't even call them anymore.
Wow. You know, they are out of control. I can tell you that I think one of the most egregious things, Sheriff Mack, that I have heard of is the issue of these emergency removal situations where we had a case here in Oklahoma where DHS removed a child on a Friday, so the parents couldn't go do a hearing. They couldn't do an investigation. They came in, they took the children, the parent and the child who was diagnosed with a cancer diagnosis. They wanted to get a second opinion, and all they wanted to do was look at a different, maybe a more naturopathic treatment pathway.
Of course.
DHS was called. The child was taken to the hospital, forced to do treatment against his wishes and against the parents, made the parents sign the forms, even though they were under DHS custody. The parents had to sign the form. And the concern is that they define these emergencies and it just varies widely across the jurisdiction. So they interpret it in there's different ways in different jurisdictions, and then they rely on an investigation, but there's not an investigation done because they pull them out on Friday. So we're just running around in a circle like a perfect recipe for civil rights violations galore.
Well, then there's one follow-up to all of this. My son-in-law and I called several, well, not several, there's only one or two law firms that focus on this sort of thing. And both of them told us the same thing. You mean you got your grandson back? You got your son back? We deal with hundreds of people who never got their children back, and they were farmed out and adopted before they could even get a hearing.
That is egregious. How can they do that?
Can you think of anything more despicable for our government to do?
Is that like child trafficking? I mean, I'm not being bombastic here. I'm not trying to be rude, but that sounds like it, right?
I think we all ought to be a little bit bombastic until something happens, because there's got to be a solution to this. And I called the governor's office back then and tried to get something going. I want to come in and see somebody. And, okay, well, we'll set an appointment with you and we'll call you. And then they never call you and you never get an appointment with anybody. And they just march right on, and Republican and Democrat. Didn't matter at all. It doesn't matter to these people. And so it's really hard for the victims of these criminals, this type of criminality. It's really hard for us to say, yeah, you have a recourse. You have someplace you can go, because the lawyers are all too tied up and doing the ones that are really bad, the ones that never get their children returned. And we had a cleaning lady that came to our home once, and it's very rare that we get to do that, but we did. And we were all upset. And she says, well, why are you upset today? And we told her why. And she started crying. I said, what's the matter? She goes, I lost 3 of my children and never got them back that way. Yeah. And my wife and I gave her a hug, and it is just so sad to see this sort of thing happen. And if government isn't protecting families, what good is that government? And they're supposed to be doing what? That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. It's government's main priority to protect our rights. And when you're talking about protecting the sanctity of a family, that's got to be high on the list. Like, first we protect life, and then we protect the existence of parents and families. It's right after that. But when we live in a society that it's okay to murder babies in the womb, what the hell do they care? You know? So I
Absolutely.
believe that that's part of it that has decreased the value of life that bureaucrats in our system have and have been trained not to care about life. And that's what's really sad. And um, I was really rude to the two young ladies. They were like 21, 22, 23, fresh out of college, and I said, I said this calmly. How can you two do something so evil like this and act like you're doing something to help children? You know,
Yeah.
they don't say. I mean, it's like they're staring, or like you're staring, and their humanity just left them, and they're just staring out into space, like seriously, like they're hypnotized, and they wouldn't answer, and it's like they couldn't answer. They were just like, and they never did answer.
Wow.
So I don't know where it came from or what kind of training they have, but
Yeah.
I would really
Or
like to see it.
have training. I mean, I have to wonder, Sheriff Mack, because some of these people, are they just, graduated high school and answering a CPS phone line? Because what I'm hearing is they get a call. It can be an anonymous call. I could call up right now and say Joe Smith is beating his kid. And
Yeah.
they just, they looked up like people on the internet, and then they're, oh, okay, Moms for Liberty. Nope, they're bad, and then they just start writing a report. It's like, wow. I mean, it's like just there's no guardrails. There's no way that they just kind of stop and say, okay, we have to look for this evidence, or we have to have this investigation. They wrote a report. They hand it to the judge. The judge takes it. He goes, oh yeah, okay, that looks good. Yep, sign off on it, and away goes your kid.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Totally.
I mean, that's
And I will tell you, I was the school resource officer in Provo, Utah, and that included the entire Provo school district. That was 12 schools. And I'll tell you, the most common form of complaint regarding child abuse is from teachers who see the kid all day, and you'll notice a kid wearing a jacket in the summer and everybody else is wearing t-shirts and tank tops. Well, this kid's wearing a jacket. Then that's one of the signs. Withdrawal, change of grades, change of friends, and several others. But sometimes you just see the scars or the bruised kid, especially. But the abusive, the very habitual abusing parent will do it underneath the clothes where clothes are normally covered the injuries. And then sometimes they'll use like a rolled up paper, which still hurts, but doesn't create a specific damage. Sometimes book, they'll put the book on the head and then hit the book. And so I've seen the abuse, and I've seen them. And I was the only officer for 12 schools, and I was around this. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was keep a kid close to the perpetrator. Yeah, but that was very seldom. And there's even ways there to make sure that the child is not being traumatized. And whatever happened, what's wrong if we keep a CPS worker in that home? You stay the night there. Don't send the kid to a stranger's family and make him sleep there. You sleep here. We wouldn't even consider that. Right. Why do you make the kid do it then?
Yeah.
So it's also backwards. But again, the word that just keeps coming up is inhuman and inhumane cruelty.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to pivot here because you're a constitutional sheriff. So I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit about what is a constitutional sheriff, and how do constitutional sheriffs interact with agencies like CPS? Is there a connection there?
Well, yeah, every sheriff should be. And a lot of sheriffs call themselves constitutional just because they're elected in a constitutional manner. Well, that doesn't make you constitutional. The one telltale sign that a sheriff is constitutional is that he keeps his oath of office. He knows and understands where Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution requires every public official in all three branches of government to swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. So that would presuppose that anyone who takes that oath knows and understands the Constitution. And it doesn't take a lot of understanding. Most of the Constitution is plain English. Now, the 9th Amendment to the Constitution is a little bit confusing because of the verbiage used, but it's easy to explain after you look at it. But most of them, all of them, 99% of the provisions in the Constitution are easy to understand. The problem is that I don't understand is that most police officers, most sheriffs, most chiefs of police, and most government officials have never read the Constitution. And I maintain that's impossible to keep an oath to something that you've never read or studied. Right. So we offer that study now. We offer that curriculum. We call our curriculum the Constitution for Law Enforcement. Or if it's other public officials, we do classes for teachers, but then we call it the Constitution for Teachers, the Constitution for Judges, the Constitution for Attorneys, the Constitution for county commissioners, city councils, all public officials. Because when I was first in law enforcement, I was converted to the Constitution. An epiphany happened to me. And I just said, you know what? I've got to study my oath and I've got to study the Constitution. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to swear an oath to something I've never read. So I took it upon myself to study the Constitution, and I loved it. And I started studying the Founding Fathers and the works, the things they said. I read the book about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. They were both born on the same day, and they both died on the same day. They were they died on the 4th of July, both of them. And I love Patrick Henry. Oh my goodness, Richard Henry Lee. These were amazing men, and they weren't perfect, but I found out what their intent was in devising the Constitution. And bottom line, their intent was to make sure that the horrible abuses of King George III and the English Parliament would never be repeated again in this new government, this new experiment based on government by the people. And so this was self-government. It was based on the first 3 words of the Constitution, we the people. And so this is what we present to everyone. And the one question that I want to ask every peace officer in this country, every public official, but every peace officer especially, if you were called back into time and it was December 1st, 1955, the day that Rosa Parks was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama for not giving her seat to a white man. 2 officers got on that bus and arrested her, took her to jail, fingerprinted her, booked her into a cell, photographed her, booked her into a cell, and then she was later bailed out by the NAACP. Well, if you were called back into time and you were one of those deputies or peace officers called onto that bus, what would you have done? Would you have arrested Rosa Parks that day? Or would you have sat down next to her, told the bus driver to keep going, and then escorted her home safely, and then provided her and her family with much needed extra patrol to make sure no hooded knights came and burned them out or whipped them or worse, lynched them?
Yeah.
Now tell me which one is a constitutional cop or constitutional officer. And that should be the same today. A constitutional sheriff with his constitutional deputies who've been trained and understand their role in preserving our God-given American republic, and protecting the rights of the people is the ultimate goal. Liberty is the purpose of our government, not bureaucracies and not writing tickets and not busting in doors. Our ultimate goal is the protection of civil and human rights. And most people in uniform don't understand that.
Wow. Yeah. And that is very sad. You know, it's actually very scary to hear that. But, you know, I know that that is absolutely true. I would be going up to the legislature. They're in session now. So I've been going up to the Capitol a lot. And I hear that from a lot of our legislators. There's a lot of them. They've never read the Constitution.
No, they haven't.
Like, wow.
And they swear an oath to it, though. They all swear an oath to the Constitution.
Yeah.
And usually, so help me God.
Yes.
And they summarily ignore it from there.
Yes, absolutely. I do want to talk a little bit because we were talking a little bit about reforms, and across the country, people from many different political backgrounds, they're calling for changes in the welfare system. And you and I have spoken about a couple of those, the parental rights, the communication, the judicial review needs, the family support. What reforms do you think needs to be put in place by Congress, or either at the state level or at the federal level? Where do you think we, the people, should dig in?
Well, I think we need to look at the very fundamental parts of entitlement programs. And first and foremost, we need to look at the federal government's entitlement programs and welfare state that they have established. And FDR was really the first one to start that during the Great Depression. And, you know, people had their hands out, and he's a politician and he's going to do something to put something in their hands. And so the soup lines and the huge projects that they started to provide jobs, but all came from taxpayer monies, and taxpayers were paying for all of this. Who paid for the Hoover Dam right outside Las Vegas on Lake Mead? Well, it was all done with taxpayer dollars. Right. Some private group didn't do it. And I get that government can do some infrastructure. I get that. But that wasn't the intent behind this. This was all this infrastructure so that we could put jobs back into the economy. Jobs that are just completely funded by taxpayers can actually create more economic hardships, because that's coming from people who are working and people who are providing jobs, and it takes from the pie. It makes the pie smaller. Okay, the economic pie of America. When you do that, it just decreases the size of the pie. But let me say this though. I sued the federal government back in 1994, and I won a Supreme Court case at the United States Supreme Court against the Clintons, against the Clinton administration, on the overreach of government. And this case actually brought up something, because we filed on the 10th Amendment. So I became very versed in the 10th Amendment. I know the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment actually says something that is very pertinent to what we're talking about right now, what you brought up. So does the federal government, remember when I said very fundamental, does the federal government have any authority whatsoever, any constitutional provision that allows them to get involved in entitlement programs and welfare state stuff? And if you look at the 10th Amendment, it starts out with this: the powers not delegated to the United States government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people, respectively. How many powers? It says the powers. You have to believe that that's all powers delegated to the federal government. Then how do we determine what powers they were delegated? Read the Constitution. I've done that. I've gone through the entire Constitution, and it said in my case, it actually says, and this is also true in other places, but Justice Scalia, in writing this decision, said that the federal government was only delegated certain discrete and enumerated powers. Well, discrete, small, limited, and enumerated means you can number them. You can go through them and list them. And I did, and it's barely 40. It's not even over 40, depending on how you count them, because like cruel and unusual punishment, is that 2 or is that 1? So there's a little bit of varying degrees of the amount. But believe me, it doesn't, and anybody want to work this up? Do it yourself. Go through the Constitution and look at the powers that states delegated to the new central government. We formed them, not the other way around. And now you hear these judges and say, the federal government has supremacy in everything. No, they do not. And my case even says that over and over. So I highly recommend that people get a copy of my case, because it's vital to know that the federal government has very limited and enumerated powers. But the states have failed to make sure that the federal government didn't go outside its lane of traffic. And so, first of all, every one of these stealing money from the taxpayers and giving it to people who are less fortunate or can't work. When LBJ declared the war on poverty, we spent trillions and trillions of dollars on poverty, and it never got better. In fact, some say it actually got worse. The federal government has no authorization whatsoever to get involved in giving money, taking money from one person and giving it to another. That's illegal. It's socialism, it's communism, and it's illegal. So then where do they have authority? States have much broader authority than does the federal government, but I still question whether or not the states have that authority. When the churches were in charge of welfare and charity, it was handled much better, because all the churches stopped. There's government programs to help you, take care of you. Government is not here to take care of you. And the scariest thing is to ever put the government in a position where they are in charge of taking care of you. We've seen how that's worked out, and it's been a horrible mess. So we need to start over, and we need the American people to stand up and let Congress know how you feel about all these ridiculous entitlement programs that have created such abuse that billions, and probably after we're done, trillions of dollars have been stolen by fraudulent claims.
Absolutely. Sheriff Mack, the words transparency and accountability, when we have those, trust will increase is kind of flashing in my head right now. But it seems like the central challenge is going to be to balance the responsibilities of protecting the children and protecting family rights. I mean, it's just so important. We can't erode parental rights.
That's why there's got to be a check and balance. And I believe the sheriffs of every county and chiefs of police too have got to be that check and balance.
Yeah. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Sheriff Mack, this has been a fascinating conversation. It's a very complex issue, protecting the children while safeguarding constitutional rights. It's really time for action. It's really time for reform. Sir, we've got a few minutes. I'll give you the last word. We've got your website scrolling there because we want everybody to go to your website and check it out. I know you've got a book out there that people can buy. I heard it's a good seller. Producer, I think we have a copy of that book. There we go. America's Last Hope.
I've got it here, but it's really a lot smaller than that picture makes it look. It's only 50 pages. So folks, don't worry about it. It's not that big. Again, 50 pages, and it's the best book about sheriffs in the entire country, in the history of our country. And every one of you should have this book in your home. and your kids will love this, a lot of it. And I have one other book that the kids would really like as well, and that would be The Proper Role of Law Enforcement. And it's only 30 pages and has my old rookie picture on it way back 35 years ago. Man, I looked like Superman 35 years ago, but people ought to see that. But here it is. Aha. See?
Ah, look at that guy.
See, so anyway, The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, folks. And then you want one other booklet. It's real small, and I don't have that in front of me. Oh, wait. Yes, I do. Aha. It's in my little keeper box here.
Oh, yeah.
It's on the front page, folks. And this is 3 for $5. This is a copy of my Supreme Court case. This is the most freedom enhancing, guaranteeing tool in the history of our country. Folks, this thing will blow you away. This is the United States Supreme Court ruling the only time in American history when sheriffs sued the federal government and won. Folks, in 250 years, this is the case. So it has a copy of the state flags on it. And get this book. It is absolutely, if you can see the title, folks, this is the miracle that happened when I and 6 other sheriffs sued the federal government and beat them at the United States Supreme Court. You can look up MACK VUS, M-A-C-K VUS, and see it online, or look at the part that I did all the highlights of the case and put all the best stuff in that little booklet. Get those 3 books together, and your education level on the proper role of government, the proper role of law enforcement, and the role of sheriffs will give you a 303 class. And it's absolutely vital that the American people be educated about these things, because Jefferson said, if you expect to be free and ignorant, you expect what never was or what never will be. Folks, he also warned us that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. We have to be involved in the process. We have provided that opportunity for each of you to join us, and we help train you how to work with your sheriff and local officials in making sure that we create this, what Mick was talking about, transparency and accountability by our government agencies. Folks, we have to do this. If we're going to maintain freedom in America, we have to be involved in the process. So every bit of this is available at CSPOA, stands for Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association. That law enforcement sounding organization is for you. It's for you. It creates this relationship and this tie and cooperation between you and local officials, especially law enforcement and your sheriff. If we can get you to join us, then you are part of the solution. So go to CSPOA.org, become a member of our posse, get on our list, and take the training. There's a training seminar there that's available. Take all of that, but start with the books.
Absolutely. And there's a QR code right up there in the corner, so you guys can do the QR code and go to CSPOA.org. Sheriff Mack, thank you so much, sir, for coming on again. It was great to see you. Thank you for joining us, sir. Really great to see you.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you soon, I hope.
Yes, sir. You too. I want to say thank you to you all for joining in with me today. Thank you for taking some time. Remember, resistance, it's not futile, and blessings to you all. It's time to stand up, speak out, get involved, and let's be intentional.